important to me that we talk more people to people. And we have some great panelists from marine industry and the residents down at the fort. And then I see a great bunch of you from Lanesville. And we all know that we have these separate neighborhoods. And we kind of live in little different worlds. And I know on this Fort Hotel issue, from just many of you that I've spoken to and others, that there is some knowledge that there's a proposal, but not a great deal of understanding from people I speak to about what the proposal is or what the issues are at stake. And I think that this is like an opportunity, person to person, who are these people? What do they have to say? And neighborhood to neighborhood. And Dave and I were talking last night that Lanesville has its own little history, for those of you not from around here, that has some similarities. Now, our issue goes back with Lane's Cove, those of you who don't know, to the 1960s. And it's interesting because I wasn't really living around here, but my grandmother was, and she was always a very quiet Finnish woman. But even out in Seattle, I knew there was a big controversy back here and that she had signed petitions. And what happened was that the quarry company, the cove was actually privately owned. And Greg, you can correct me in some respects if I'm wrong on this. But, and lobster boats were going out of the cove too. But Boston University came up with a proposal to purchase from the private quarry company all of Lane's Cove to set up a research facility. And fears were, of course, that they were going to fence this off for the community. And Peter, you must remember this. This was a huge issue for our neighborhood. The Cove is our community center, full of working lobstermen, kayakers, and kids in the summer, and lots of people, nights and weekends, hanging out and talking, and it's a great, great resource for us. We were in trouble as a neighborhood, and the city came to our rescue. The city bought the property. It's owned now by the Conservation Commission, and it's a community resource. And I think we all have our own history about this. We now have a shack that needs help. You may not know what that's about, but the more we get to know each other and realize that as neighborhoods we may not talk, but we're all part of the same community, and we all share a love for the places that we live and the spaces that we share, and sometimes we need the city's help and need to help each other with protecting these zones and understanding what is really, really at stake. So I organized this meeting as a dialogue. The way I've structured it is to talk about what the Fort Hotel project is, and then also something about the impacts, which you can hear about from the businesses and residents down there, and then have a long period of time where those of you with questions, we can try to discuss. It's important that they understand what's on your mind and vice versa. And there are other people in the audience who know some things too. So it might be that, like Danny can answer some things and others if questions come up. So I want to say that I did invite the project proponent is Sherry DiLorenzo. Her partner in this is Jim Davis, who is the chairman of New Balance Shoes. And for those of us out here who did not know, he and his wife have had a house on the far side of Plum Cove, the big house at the end, since the early 1990s. So Jim Davis is not around that much, but he is actually one of our neighbors as well. And Sherry got a call from one of her friends last night and asked them to let me know if they would like to have someone come here to present their proposal, and I didn't hear anything today. So I have written up a description from the public record on what this proposal is, which I will go through. I also want to say that I, a number of times, contacted Jackie Hardy and asked her to come and participate in the dialogue, and I did not hear back from Jackie one way or another about her coming. So hopefully she may come in at some point. But so here we are. people down at the fort and the businesses and those of us up in Lanesville, and let's hope we can know what a good community dialogue is. So, this is what I did up today in the absence of anyone from Sherry's office or Jim Davis. And if I could just take a few minutes to run through this. These facts about the proposal, are out of the actual application that they submitted, 2 planning board hearings minutes that I got from the planning board, and some reference to this material from the Gloucester Daily Times. So the actual proposal is for a hotel overlay district in this portion of the port and in the marine industrial zone. Actually, across the street is the actual designated port area, but this is a city marine industrial zone. An overlay district will basically leave the underlying zoning in place, but it will, typically, it is meant to further restrict for that district. In this case, it's actually the opposite. It's really loosening it to allow a hotel, which is not allowed in the marine industrial zone. So within this district, it would be specifically for purposes of the hotel. And any particular proposal would then, if this were to pass, only require a city council special permit. So the actual proposal is to create a district. Originally, the district was to encompass the Bird's Eye building, plus the Chamber of Commerce building, which is 33 Commercial Street, parking lot area, or the actual building. In the course of discussions, Sherry has removed 33 Commercial Street from this proposal. And there was an intent to have the parking lot for overflow parking, which is, if that does not happen, if 33 Commercial Street is not part of the proposal, there'll be a little bit more intense need for parking in the Bird's Eye Building Hotel. So that's changed a little bit over time. The petitioner is Beauport, they're called. It's, again, as I said, it's a partnership of Sherry, who is from Cruzport, and Jim Davis, as I mentioned. So the objectives of the HOD are straight out of their application. Really nothing on this sheet is editorializing at all. It's actually language from the hearings or their application. So they're asking for a HOD to have a hotel and other uses. The argument would be that it would stimulate the general economy by creating jobs and tax revenue, appropriate use of land, and public access. That's the argument for the benefits to the city. John Cunningham, their lawyer, and Sherry at the planning board hearing made various arguments for this proposal, that it's a lot that doesn't have access for fishing use. They were offering, you may have read about this, to sign an easement to give the public the use of the beach. That's now gone back to the planning board. It's not clear that that's the right strategy legally for the city to do that. Maybe the city even owns the beach anyway. They argued that existing plans that the city has suggest there's a strong need for a hotel in the downtown area, that this hotel would be a great economic driver for the visitor base and marine technology businesses, hotel and conference space. As I mentioned, tax base, water and sewer rate contributions, room and meal taxes, that Cruzport has shown that you can have hospitality next to marine industrial, and that this property has been unused and deteriorating for years. Now, they are not required to actually submit detailed drawings or specifics on the hotel, but they have had several descriptions of their vision for this. I have to say, initially, it was 100 rooms in a very simple hotel. As they described it, it was one restaurant and one meeting room and room. More recently, and this was also in the newspaper, it has gone down to being 80 rooms and full accessory use, meaning spa, pool, store, and a couple of meeting rooms. So it really is a really full-service high-end hotel. They propose to keep just the tower, and then it would be a 4-floor hotel. Interestingly enough, the tides are so high there that the ground level would have to be just for parking. The actual building space would have to be on the second floor with lobby and store and fitness and pool and all that. And then the 2 floors above would be the 80 rooms. And a hotel of that type, they are arguing with, it's very, very labor intensive. You know, it's almost like a person a room. So they're saying that 100 jobs would be created. So these are the facts. They're right out of the public record. I don't know if anyone is here to add if I've missed anything, but I think that's a pretty complete description.
A couple of quick corrections, just slight details. So in the original, they did propose 33 Commercial Street, 4765 for the first building, but also 10 Beach Court, which is at the end, and the vacant lot that's immediately behind 33 Commercial Street. So that's still all on the table. That's not actually been removed yet from. That's right. It's a 4-family house, 3-family house, sorry, at the end of Mac owns that. Mac also owns 33 Commercial Street. And one of the questions that people were having is, if Beauport LLC is asking for a hotel overlay to build a hotel on one lot, why are they asking for the same privileges to be granted to Mac's 2 buildings? And when their lawyer was asked by the planning board, does this mean that those 2 buildings would also benefit from the same privileges, meaning they could put in a 75 to now 120-foot tall hotel? The answer was yes, they would be authorized to do so. The other clarification, Valerie, and it's just a slight detail, but they aren't preserving the tower. They would reconstruct something that looked like the tower.
Oh, really?
It would be demolished. Erasing any piece of the history would be removed, and that was something that came out Monday night, that this is a building of equal importance to the history of Gloucester as the paint factory. Right.
Okay, so
Since the panel has started, can they be introduced as the...
yes, so I'm going to do that, and I actually had kind of an order. So this is Ann Malloy. You probably know her company. If you don't know Ann, is Neptune's Harvest, the great organic fertilizer that's made out of Gloucester and sold even worldwide. So thank you for coming. She is actually, her family business is on the other side of the street. So it's one of the marine businesses that would be, she might want to tell you about possibly affected by that. And the second panelist is it Nat or Nate?
Nat or Nathaniel?
Nat, but not Nate. Okay, no, I thought I Nat and his wife are new residents of Gloucester, and also apparently, I've heard, love to come out to Lanesville
every weekend. And while my last name is Irish and mia madre italiana, mi suome, for those of you who are out here in Finnish as well.
So Nat has a business that I've never gotten all the details, but World Stove, which is also international and is really committed to marine industry, and they can work spend a little bit about their work together. And our final panelist is Jimmy Tarantino, our survivor.
I usually get tomatoes.
TV celebrity.
So Jimmy and his wife Laurel are actually residents of the fort. Maybe your whole life. Wait, you can explain.
5th generation.
So in your own voices, I really ask you to talk about who you are, what you do, what's an issue for you, and to my neighbors. So why don't you start? And then maybe 10 minutes each or something, just so you get a chance to
Or less.
talk.
We don't want to bore people.
So my family already, my parents and my grandparents were raised on the fort, so it's in my blood. Not only our business is there, but that's where we're from also. And the fish company at 88 Commercial Street where we are has been in the family for 100 years. My grandfather Leo started it during the Depression. And when he went to the bank for the loan, the guy said, wow, you're very progressive starting this business in the Depression. So he called it Progressive Seafoods. So that ended up, he had that from 1920 until 1965. And he was unloading fishing boats and selling fish all over under the Seven Seas brand name. And then in 1965, he was also selling oil to the fishing boats as well. And he realized he could make more money selling oil than he could selling fish. So he went into the home heating business. And my father had a place over where the Coast Guard station is now called Morning Star Fisheries. And he was partners with Carlo Scimitaro, and Gloucester came and took that property by eminent domain to put the Coast Guard station there, so he had a fish company without a place to go. And my grandfather decided he wanted to get out anyway, so he sold him the property. No, he bought it from his father-in-law, it wasn't his father, it was my mother's father. And so in '65 he started Ocean Crest Seafoods there, and Carlo Scimitaro started Star Fisheries, so they broke off at that point, and that's what Captain Carlos is now. So my father had it, and 5 kids, all of us work there now, and when he passed away, he left it to the 5 kids, so now we all run it. And in the 80s, we were processing a huge amount of fish. There was a lot of fish being processed in Gloucester, and there was a ton of gurry. When you fillet a fish, it's 30%, maybe 40% is the fillet, and the rest is left over, which we call gurry. So all this gurry at the time was going to the D-hide on the state fish pier. And it smelled pretty bad. And it did get shut down because a lot of, more higher end people started moving into East Gloucester and complaining about the smell, and it did end up getting shut down. So at the time we were paying a fishing boat, it was the Italian Gold, which ended up sinking, we used to call it gurry barge. We'd put all the gurry on it and all the other processes in Gloucester would as well, and it would go out to sea and dump it. And it was really bad for the environment because as it decomposed, it created a dead zone with the oxygen as it decomposed, so it was bad for the environment, it was expensive, and it was very wasteful. And we knew, that the Indians did the fish thing, and all the Italian fishermen always had the best tomatoes, they knew it worked. So we ended up getting together with UMass Marine Station over here, and they helped us develop a process to turn it into fertilizer.
Herb Bolton and Steve Keller.
Yeah, and Steve Keller was very good.
I'm going to interrupt here, which is a perfect example of why you need to keep a working waterfront and come up with innovation like that Gloucester is famous for. And I think that's
Just like Clarence.
So, that's why I get mad when people say, you just say no change, no change. Like, we've done nothing but change. You have to change, you have to adapt. We didn't let our wall fall in. We got, a little ingenuity and ambition and, hard work, and you can do almost anything. So that's what we did, and when we started the Neptune's Harvest, we were just doing bulk to farms, and then in the early 90s, we started to bottle it and sell it to all different homeowners. We do sell worldwide, and we still sell 4,500 gallon tanker trucks. We make 6,000 gallons a day on average, and we're selling out. We're about to start a lead time within a week probably. So it's a huge business, and it works great. People love it. It's better than chemicals, and get lots of fish curry on farmers' tails instead of toxic chemical from Monsanto. So you gotta like that.
Yeah, totally.
So could you
And then we've expanded into seaweed and crab shell, and there's a lot of other possibilities, and we're trying to expand. We want to expand. We are looking for land. Everyone says there's a ton of land. It's really not true. It's almost impossible to find waterfront land. A lot of people are in holdout mode, wait and see, thinking that, if the rezoning starts to change, that, they'll get a lot more money for their properties. So it's a very hard thing to buy land, but we are looking, we are expanding, and, we continue to grow and want to develop new products down there, and we're wasting a lot of our time fighting rezoning for 5 years now. It's the 3rd attempt to rezone this, and it's taken a huge amount of our time that we could be creating more jobs.
Could you explain what the issue is?
Okay,
What is the problem?
We don't feel it's compatible at all with Commercial Street. The whole port is zone marine industrial, and that's to protect the businesses that are down there. The houses there were grandfathered in, and the people that live there are used to the smells, noise, trucks, you know, it's just part of living down the fort. It's not great, I'm sure they'd rather not, you know, have to deal with that, but they're used to it, they're fishermen, they've worked in the fish plants all their lives, they're from there, you know, they don't complain, but, you know, we're worried that people with a lot higher tax bracket could end up complaining a lot more. And a hotel, certainly you wouldn't want a lot of tourists going around down there, it's very dangerous, tractor trailer trucks, forklifts. It's just not compatible, and because of the story of the Beehive, the reason we even got in business is because they were put out of business. It's not like maybe this could happen, or, you know, they're compatible, don't worry about it, everybody always keeps telling us that, you know, we're not putting you out of business, it'll be fine, but we have a precedent that's already been set, and, you know, it's not an unrealistic thing to think that this could happen to us, and they're buying a lot of property, overvalue. Next thing you know, I'll leave that to Jimmy, but the residents, you know, are worried that they're not going to be able to afford to live there, and once it starts falling, we're going to have a little basket neck down there, and it's not going to be cool, it's not going to look like authentic Gloucester, and, you know, where a lot of people aren't going to be able to afford to live here, and it's a very real concern, so. Okay, that's fine.
You bid on the Bird's Eye property though too.
And we did bid on the Bird's Eye property. The first rezoning attempt, the city came down, they never consulted us, they didn't come down and see what was going on. There's $80 to $100 million worth of business, commercial, marine, industrial business on Commercial Street. You know, it's Commercial Street for a reason, and it's a lot of big business. So anyway, the city came down, we had no idea they were going to try to rezone. They just showed up and they had a meeting, so we all went down and they had all these big drawings, and it was like unrecognizable as a working waterfront, completely gentrified with, you know, little boutiques and all these people in their high heel shoes walking around. You know, it was amazing. So we all were worked up about it, and we offered to buy the Bird's Eye right then to the mayor, and we said, well, it was the Gloucester Crossing thing was going on, like, well, give us a tip and we'll buy the Bird's Eye and we'll fix it up. And she's like, oh yeah, you know how that got me, no way. So it was kind of like just a thought at the time, but then the rezoning failed and the bank owned the building. We're like, oh, you know, maybe we will buy that building. So we went in and we did bid up to $2 million. We got in a bidding war with the developer at the time, which was Mac Bell, and he was bidding at developer pricing, and we were bidding at marine industrial pricing. So we thought $2 million was like as most as we could spend, knowing that it's going to cost a lot to fix it up, but it would have been really convenient for us to have it.
I should interject that the property has been assessed at $680,000. So bidding $2 million was considerably over market value, whereas people were saying, Ann was underbidding. From $600,000 to $2 million, she overextended the possibilities.
And we weren't going to tear it down, we were going to fix it up. We went through there with the realtor, and it is built like, you know, this huge, big concrete building. I mean, we didn't want to tear it down, you don't have to. Fixing it up, painting it, restoring it to its one beautiful condition would have been great, and we had a lot of good ideas for innovation, and, you know, I won't put all that, but we did try to buy it. We were outbid by a developer. Had the city not been throwing out these things like it was advertised in the flyer, the bank owned it, an Illinois bank ended up foreclosing on it, so they owned it at the time, and they advertised it as a hotel location, and it said right in the ad, the mayor's, you know, reassuring that the rezoning will go through.
Right.
So had it not been advertised as a hotel location, had it not been out there at developer pricing, we'd have been in there right now and creating more jobs, and none of this would have been happening, so.
How many employees do you have now?
We have 40, maybe 45, or probably up to 45, or maybe even closer to 50 now. I think we've hired 10 people in the last couple of months.
And what did the lot go for?
Well, Matt bought it for $2.25 million, and then he sold it to Jim Davis for $6.5 million.
It's been reported.
Reported that he has.
As you go on, Mac Bell was a millionaire. He bought the property and tried to develop it to his website, Gloucester.com.
Yep.
To rezone it since 2009. Now you get a billionaire bought it triple the amount, which is like 60 cents to you and I for what he's worth. $6 million a day he makes. Why is it different now with a billionaire owning it to what?
The
Mac Mills
the two
is
times
doing.
before, that's a damn good question, and the city still hasn't answered that
Because
question.
they voted down twice, why we having this meeting, why are they having the opportunity to try again, because I have $1 billion?
Yeah, can they run us through this for the next 20 years? I mean, we will be out of business.
Well, all of us will, if we combine all our wealth together, we still wouldn't match it.
Say the truth.
Why the developer pay so much money?
I asked that
I mean, why
question.
would the kid pay more than what not pay?
I think there might be another property involved, that's all I know.
I'd like to speculate an answer on that question. May I speculate an answer on that question? Because the Times doesn't want you to speculate, and Bruce Toby wants you to pay clear attention to the facts that you get. But they're not gonna come right out and tell you, we're gonna pay so much for that property, freeze up all the other waterfront property owners from developing anything there, and it freezes the market. And then they can come back, the city can come back and tell you, well, we have to take I-4C2 out of the DPA now because nobody wants to develop there. Well, of course not, because there's bigger money to be had. People are all, it puts everything on hold. It puts a long line of waterfront property owners in line supporting the rezoning so that they can cash in when the time comes.
It's a standard development practice, and you see the domino effect already starting. So after the Bird's Eye building was purchased at 10 times the assessed value, which is a significant figure, 2 weeks later, a house at the end of the fort, which was assessed at $540,000, was placed on the market for $2.4 million. So the ripple effect has already started.
And Jim Davis has bought the Lucille.
He
He
did
paid
buy.
twice the asking price on the fort.
And he too began to buy houses that are on the fort at many times the assessed value.
So, would you like to introduce yourself
Sure.
and what you see at stake?
Okay, so I'm Nathaniel Mulcahy. We're new to the area. And I was asked or given the opportunity to move my business here. My business is an international company. It's mostly humanitarian engineering. People say, your company's called World Stove, why do you have to be marine industry? And one of the reasons we are marine industry is stoves is only a small portion of what we do. The residue that comes from our stoves use waste material. So when you mow your lawn, you're actually throwing away material that you could be using to heat your house. The average American home is about a third of an acre. Obviously here in older parts of the country we've got much smaller lots, but US-wide about a third of an acre per household. If you were to mow a third of an acre every week during the normal growing season and save the grass clippings, pelletize them, biomass has usually a standard measure of energy, which is between 18 and 24 kilojoules per kilogram. And I'm sorry,
All right, lost me.
yeah, no, I know. Sorry, I kind of nerd out. But, okay, so basically you get a chunk of energy for every time you mow your lawn, and if you save that, you can use that for heat or power generation. The amount of energy that the average New England home uses to heat in one winter is the equal amount of energy that you would get if you collect all your glass clippings from a third of an acre. So that's the amount of energy that's out there and free. If you put that into your house and you're heating your house, you get a residue that comes out of it, and that residue is called biochar. By combining it with products like ANS and by doing intensive algae generation, which is the system we have, and you put these two together, you can take that product and you can fix deserts. You can improve reforestation programs. Right now in the Horn of Africa, we've all heard about the famines that are going on there. The Horn of Africa is not because they don't have food, it's because they don't have the option to grow food anymore. The land is desertified, you put plants in it, they die. There was a project to try and stop the Gobi Desert called the Green Wall of China, where they planted thousands and thousands and thousands of trees, but 97% of the trees died because they couldn't survive in the desert's conditions. The north of Haiti, because of extensive deforestation from coking fires, is now officially classified desert. So people are starving largely because they can't grow food. And one of the
What does that have to do with the fort? Get to the point.
okay, great, thank you. That's fair. So thank you for getting me back on track. So basically, we came here to take our international business and build a single headquarters and expand our production. We need a marine industry. If you look across the United States and along the East Coast, there are almost no places that would offer the things that Gloucester offers. Gloucester has a marine industry area. It has a full-service port. It is in a green city. Take those three combinations and find one other city on the East Coast that matches that qualification.
New Bedford, Fall River.
That's not true.
Portsmouth.
No, absolutely not true. Absolutely not true. New Bedford, all the land in the DPA of New Bedford is owned by New Bedford. Gloucester is privately owned. Fall River also has privately owned issues, and they're not classified as a green city, so you don't get the same benefits. They don't have the full-service port that Gloucester has. Portsmouth no longer has the qualifications for new marine industries moving in. So the number of places that are available are dramatically shrinking. My interest here is, obviously I was asked, when we were shopping around, Sarah Garcia toured us around and said, this is where you want to move your business. And took
I'm
us,
still lost. What is your point with your business to do with the fort? To
Abs-
run your business with the shit you take in, burn, whatever. What does that have to do with the fort? The location, or your own property there, or what?
it has a lot to do with the location. So we came because of the available, or what we were told was available marine industry space. Shortly thereafter, Mac Bell's deal with Jim Davis went through, and the property values took a big jump. Of the 116 properties that are on the port right now, not one is willing to sell, and not one is willing to lease unless it's as tenant at will. And nobody's going to go in and invest hundreds and hundreds of thousands of dollars for infrastructure as a tenant at will. It just isn't going to happen. So the city is saying, we need new industries to come in, like mine. And then they say, but look, no new industries are coming. Of course you're not going to get new industries to come into your city and create jobs. If there is no land available, everybody who has vacant land available for purchase says, I'm going to wait to see how the rezoning thing goes. So get back in touch with me later on. All the people who are just willing to rent their property or lease it are saying, that hotel issue, until that's resolved, I'm only willing to sign a tenant at will lease.
So basically you're saying that you are an industry that needs a marine industrial access and you can't fly because of this zoning.
Because the zoning thing, everybody's on hold. And that's 116 properties that are not attracting businesses and not creating jobs in Gloucester.
I'm just curious, what does Sarah Garcia say to that? Did she encourage you to come and now you have no place to go? Double I just wondered what her answer is to that.
She says, I never told you to come.
Really?
But she walked you around the town.
She took many, many weeks and drove me around to all the available properties.
So is your business running or not?
I'm working out of Middleton now.
Oh, okay.
But he can't do all the things he wants to do until he gets oceanfront
Right, because
property.
I need access
He's
to.
looking for oceanfront property and so are we.
How are you gonna stop the thing from happening going forward? Well, I read a book, walking yesterday across the liquor store, some Clarence Birdseye book.
Great.
Yeah.
Yeah?
Okay, I read about him today. He died 2 days before I was born or whatever. October 7, 1956.
Cool.
Okay, it's a historic site, just like Sebastian Junger did the Perfect Storm.
Right,
Now we got Wicked Tuna, and then we got Clarence Birdseye property.
right.
So can't you use that as an avenue to stop this development?
That's one avenue that's been explored. That's a great point. That's one avenue that's been
It's
explored.
your business, which, you know, as far as I care, doesn't interest me one bit, okay? Because it doesn't relate to anything that the situation is to stop that from developing.
It's a really cool flag that he can't get off the ground until he gets
Well, that's
off the property.
a lot of people like that fail. They start a business, they fail.
I do want to ask, can I ask a question about the one, when, on the meetings I've gone to about this, I keep wondering, where are the marine industries? They keep, the other side of the argument is, you know, we need space for these marine industries, but where are they?
We
Why
got
aren't
two right there that can't find space.
Are there more?
There are at least 10 others. One of the properties that we're looking at right now is the one owned by the Cooperoo family.
So is the city, like, is the city
not letting them in? Is that what's happening?
They're
If they are
neglecting to vote.
actively?
No,
No.
the property owners are holding on
Okay.
and holding out for top dollar.
Right.
Okay.
And,
All right, I get it. Sorry.
let's be completely open here. I mean, there are some strong tactics being used to prevent businesses that are not going to go into the condo business from getting in. So I was with Mr. Kukuru, who owns the property on Commercial Street that we are looking at to purchase. We went in there, we had permission to go in there from the leasee, who is North Atlantic Seafood. Mr. Kukuru owns the property. We got in, we had scheduled a regular appointment. We got no more than 5 minutes into the building. Somebody received a phone call. The leasee came down. 2 lawyers told us that we had to vacate the property immediately and it was no longer available for viewing. We were then informed that Mr. Davis had a due diligence period signed, and until that due diligence period has expired, we could not view the property even though Mr. Kukuru owned it and legitimately was selling it.
And Mr. Cooper was asked to leave his own building.
Yeah.
So Jimmy, would you, okay?
Can I just ask one quick question?
Sure.
These marine industry businesses
Yes.
that are looking for places to move in, are they job creation businesses?
They are. They are. And Natalie, that's a great point, because one of the often touted themes of why a hotel has to come in is we need the jobs in the area. Hotel jobs traditionally are seasonal. When the Gloucester Crossing project went in, the city's own fiscal impact report stated that 85% of the jobs created would be so low paying that they could only be counted as part-time or second jobs. And because of the seasonal nature of the hotel that they wanted to build in Gloucester Crossing, they could count on conservatively at most a 65% occupancy rate. So you're looking at 65% occupancy for jobs that people can't make a living on, compared to what Vince Modellaro at the Ward 2 meeting very accurately pointed out. He said, hey, I employ 28 people, they get 6 weeks of paid vacation, they have full health benefits, give me one hotel that's going to give you the same. So it's not just job creation, it's a better quality of job.
But how long has the Bird's Eye been unoccupied?
Bird's Eye's been occupied for eight years.
No, the freezer, when we looked at it, the freezer was active. It was full of orange juice and grape
That was,
juice.
and that was right up until a couple of years
Yeah.
ago. Americold, they'll tell you that thing's been lying dormant for 50 years.
Not at all.
Americold just finished there probably 2 years ago.
So let me just interject, Jimmy, I want to make sure that you
Right.
just tell your family story, the Ford story.
Yeah, well, I don't want to speak too much. I will give you a brief background on who I am specifically, but I'd really much rather get into how the reason why we're all here. The only way we're going to stop this plan, and there is a plan in effect, and in a little while I'll pass you out. I mean, they love to, and I'm going to use a general term several times in my tough conversation here. There is what I call, and I'll keep the specific names out to save the incriminating, however they say that. There is a profiteers PR team working actively to keep the citizens of Gloucester uninformed. And they're doing an excellent job. It's more than one people, it's a whole combination of, there's a plan. And the plan is not about a hotel. Part of the profiteers PR team is to keep you misinformed, is so that you just think it's about a hotel being stopped again by the people down the floor, that ugly eyesore, they don't want change. This is, if you got, anybody reading the
Just say no
paper?
to everything.
Has anybody read that in the paper? A handful of people down the floor, keeping an old building, maybe they'd rather have the junkies hanging out down there. Why are they stopping progress? They're obstructionists. This is a reoccurring theme from this profiteers PR team. And they've done a tremendous job. And part of why they're doing a tremendous job is because the citizens of Gloucester, like myself, I'm not an activist. I'm a port kid that likes to row boats and goof around and draw attention to myself. That's why I'm not here. But that's just a joke. The reality is, no, the reality of this situation
He has to
is,
be home with his wife.
the reality of this situation, why I got drawn in, I've watched it twice. I watched the Marriott come in and heard those lies. It was gonna boost the city, we're gonna reopen schools and fire stations, jobs. It's the same lies that I heard for the Marriott. The city said no, the people rose up and said no, the abutters said no. This isn't what's good for Gloucester. So they said, all right, they went back to the drawing board. Mayor Kirk didn't like that answer, no. So she went back to the drawing board. They brought in Mac Bell, a pretty good sized developer for the city. And I watched and listened to Mac Bell's lies. So I sat in the audience right next to Bob Ryan while Mac eloquently defined his mixed use was going to include the International Dory Race Committee, which I was president of at the time, lying bold-facedly to my face, and bring Ryan and Wood distilleries in. Bob Ryan leans over to me and says, I can't produce liquor in the same place with residences. Mac was just throwing fluff. So that got shot down. Now they're getting better at it. They've been at it for a couple of years now. They're determined to change Gloucester. And you can read all the smoke and fluff you want about how many hotels, how many rooms. They've changed it already in the couple of months that they've designed it. But there's a bigger plan. And I brought a couple of maps. I'll pass out around, and I want you to pass these around.
Here, Jimmy.
That's an extra one? Oh, she got all kinds of them. I wrote an article letter to the editor in November saying, wake up Gloucester, it's not about the Ford anymore. Jim Davis is in town and he's actively pursuing property all over Gloucester. And he is. The LLCs combined with Mac Bell, by the way, totally denied he ever knew Jim Davis, even though he was an innovator selling New Balance sneakers when they had the glass elbow. He was also seen with Jim Davis the day that Nathaniel McKay and Cooper, the owner of North Atlantic, were asked to leave the building because they were going and walking the streets. Every day down the fort, you watch Lexuses and Mercedes driving around the fort now. We used to see wharf trucks, but now it's Jaguars, Mercedes, and Lexuses. And rather than look out at the beautiful view we have down there, they're pointing in and they're stopping and they're looking at what's going to be their new condominiums. Now, that is purely speculation on my part. But if you take a look at the map and you see the land grabbing that's going on by Beauport LLC, Cruiseport LLC, 1907 LLC, Pavilion Mercado LLC, Waterfront, there are actually, I think, I wrote down the number, I think it's 7 LLCs have purchased 8 properties and have actively pursued these other properties you see. Coincidentally, at the same time, the city is saying, we can't do anything with I-4C2. Let's pull it out of the DPA.
So explain the map before they all look at it though.
I don't think that map needs explaining. The red is there and the blue is there.
They're not all properties that are either bought or
it says that clearly on the map. Some have been purchased, all of the red.
Realizes that.
Right.
$1 million each, is that what the
No, I wish some of them many more millions.
So I ask you, ladies and gentlemen, you're a waterfront property owner. Are you going to support the rezoning so that you can get a piece of this pie? Jim Davis is going around with paying triple the value.
Now, I'm glad Jimmy brought up the I-4C2, and I'll cut briefly on that, and then in the red shirt, I'm sorry, I don't know your name, so I don't want to just say
I'm Ray Carrington.
Hey, Ray? Okay, I'm the...
Rick. Richard.
Rick, nice to meet you. So for the I-4C2, and Rick mentioned very wisely New Bedford. New Bedford is a great example of what you can do with a marine industry city. Their former mayor, Scott Lang, because they have city-owned marine industry space, was able to get $280 million of federal and state funding funneled straight into the city. He was able to get $80 million just to restore historic buildings on the historic waterfront. He was able to get hundreds of millions of dollars for green energy systems. He was able to get hundreds of millions, millions of dollars for the 200 remaining fishing boats in the New Bedford Harbor, and to help them upgrade their systems, help upgrade their docks. So the possibilities that are there are there. One of the key things in being able to access much of those funds is that the city has to own the land. As I mentioned earlier, there are 116 lots on the marine industry and DPA area in Gloucester. Of those 116, there are 2 lots available to the
Let me
city.
interrupt because that came up on Monday. Technically, the story is actually worse.
Yeah.
Like Maritime Gloucester is able to access Seaport bond money and other public funds. They've worked out the details. The city is capable of funneling similar millions into this working waterfront in spite of it being owned by private property. But what I have seen over the years is that they have not committed themselves to this waterfront. They've worked on industrial parks and Gloucester Crossing and whatever, but it's the absence of an aggressive, solid plan that New Bedford has had that has meant that we have not asked for nor received these millions of dollars that are available from the federal and state government. So that's a compounding element. I think the picture that's emerging is that, unfortunately, everyone has your question, Cynthia. Where's the marine industry? And if it isn't there, then there can't be any. And so then as each year goes by, it looks more dire. And it's 2 things. It's that in this, and Suzanne Altsberger has been fabulous at articulating this, is if you want to cause problems for a working waterfront, you add this instability in the zoning. You get the owners holding off the property, speculative real estate development, and you stall work coming into the working waterfront. And the second thing I would say is that any community worth their salt makes public investments and partnerships in these kinds of research. We've let universities go to other ports, New Bedford, South Dartmouth. While they set up programs, we've done nothing to really bring a solid academic, idea business generator.
Our stories of success interrupt their stories of marine industrial's dead. Look, nobody's coming, we have to sell out,
Right. Instead of having a proactive investment strategy, the other thing is that we have not gone after infrastructure investments on the waterfront. So when the Dehive closed, there's been a need, if you're going to bring processing back, to have pre-treatment in wastewater. And we haven't articulated that need and gone to the state and federal governments for that kind of support. So in many ways, I think what we learned at the Maritime Summit last fall is that the state and federal governments are kind of waiting for us to get our act together to figure out where we want to go in the marine industrial area and get their participation with the monies that they have in the millions or tens of millions, or in the case of New Bedford, hundreds of
Marine
millions
industry
of dollars.
doesn't come dropping in your lap like Jim Davis's bags of money. It has
Well,
to be from
sometimes it is in your lap too. It's still
just walking, if I may, talking about the Maritime Summit, I don't know the specific numbers. I know we got a grant to invite all these experts from around the country to come and tell us what's Gloucester's maritime future. And I'd just like to share some points with you on this. By the way, the Maritime Summit, I remember one number from the draft of their summary. There's 481 marine science, marine-related businesses in New England that, given the right stimulation, they will come. I walked down the fort. Now, this is what the city should be doing. Keep in mind, the city is not going after. How much money did New Bedford get in funding in the last several years under Scott Wright? $280 million available to boost your maritime economy and the infrastructure work and the cleanup that's necessary to draw these kind of people. That doesn't just drop in your lap. You gotta go write the grant. Somebody has to go after that money, and the city hasn't been getting that done because they have another plan.
That's not entirely true, Jimmy. The city, from those same funds, did get $1.2 million to build a harbor wall.
I'm
It's
sorry.
going to be very pretty.
1.2 million.
It's falling in.
Well, and I think that actually, the last point I want to make, and because I was actually very much involved in the Maritime Summit, and by the way, there's a presentation, I gave the keynote address. Yeah. And there is a presentation on this on April 24th at the City Council, so I hope maybe you can go down to that and listen to it. But The most striking thing for me is having heard about, they came in from San Diego and New Bedford and Canada and Rhode Island, and they said, and literally Anne Malloy was the star. I mean, the work that her company has done and she is doing is like recognized outside of Gloucester as just being incredibly progressive and important work and creative work. And there was a sense that we underestimate ourselves. It's just this, we don't know what we have. And instead of learning how to do genuine economic development, we had this idea embedded in us that if you change the zoning, then development will happen. And so one more time we're up, if we tinker with the DPA rules, if we loosen it up some, well then we'll get economic development. And so this combination of instability in the zoning and
Flexibility,
speculative,
like flexibility.
No.
but
it's a sort of a theory of what needs to be done in the waterfront. And I think those of us who were at the summit and have heard more about New Bedford have come to understand. I'm not sure if I would go so far as to say that our city leadership didn't understand this. I think it's
I didn't say that.
I think it's a complex history of fishing being so dominant, we took it for granted, and then somehow the DPA as the engine of change, somehow that set in. But now we have a fresh chance to really look at how to get proper investments and really move on, and get universities more here and move on.
Can I say one more thing?
Sure.
This instance that's going on be any different than happened in 1980 when the Moonies came into Gloucester?
Yeah, it's totally different.
Okay, same thing.
No, it's totally different. This is more in tune with what happened in Nantucket. When Walter Beinecke Jr. came in, it was depressed at the time. Only this is worse because I believe, and this is just my personal opinion, that they're intentionally putting off, they have a game plan for the development of, and that's the slow removal of the working waterfront and bring in the mayor's own words, the order of the way she sees it. This was from her inaugural speech. In discussing a prosperous economy, she wants to support the visitor-based economy, the fishing industry, and the maritime economy. And I think, when they write their inaugural speeches, they put it in an order of importance. When she opened the Maritime Summit was here, and again, I'm going to use that term again, was here to say, and what really come out of that is, there's tremendous opportunity here. I can quote, "There's incredible opportunity," observed Michael Jones, president of San Diego's Maritime Alliance. You build maritime clusters and you make it happen. The city's neglecting to do that because there's a different plan. The Gloucester Daily Times...
Or no plan. I mean...
No, I think it's a different plan.
No, this is specifically a different plan.
They have a
Why would you... Let me ask you this. You come up with your own conclusions. Why would...
You started on Nantucket, and you were starting to tell us...
Yeah, I digress very often. In Nantucket, it was very depressed there. There's a movie by Henry Farini I recommend you see. It's called Last Call. It was very depressed there, and as corporate does, when people, it's called land grabbing. I don't understand. I'm just starting to learn as I learn more about what's going on here. A gentleman named Walter Beinecke had a ton of money, went in, bought it all real cheap.
Under several different LLC names, then his rich friends started moving in, buying more.
Bought it all up, and then it became desirable. Now, sold high. Nantucket, there's no working waterfront like in Nantucket. There's a very well-to-do businessman can't afford property in Nantucket. If you want to buy a piece of property in Nantucket, you better be a very, very successful Manhattan millionaire, and then you got to find ways to dump your money and divide it in.
There's another difference, Rick, with the Mooney issue. The Mooney issue, it was just the Moonies. And
But they bought up property.
they did. I know, I completely agree with you. But I think what's different here is it seems that the developers are having strong allies within the town government, city government, which didn't exist during the Mooney's time. And that makes it a much different battle.
But the fishing problem is is what the federal government did to all the northeast fisheries. And the main thing is not to have any environmental impact for offshore drilling. If there's no fish, we go out there and drill.
Exactly. Now.
That's the big picture you gotta think about.
Yeah, no, we are on the
I
exact,
grew up in Houston, go to Galveston, and you can walk on oil on the beach.
right?
It's so salty and it's gray, it's
So Rick,
same thing's gonna happen here.
we're exactly on the same page, and if you go out at nighttime and look at the outer harbor, you see the platform out there already.
Well, until you have an oil slick come in Gloucester Harbor, or a tanker leaks, then you have the real environmental impact that ruins everything.
Well, there's
It's
not,
for it, it's your whole life.
but I mean, Sherry Lorenzo, who wants this whole thing to come together, she's doing exactly what you are warning us about.
Now, this is irrelevant if Seabrook goes up.
No.
All this saying, you know, look at it when they built that thing, the
That's
objection.
true.
All right, so.
Yeah, we don't talk about Seabrook here.
Oh, wait.
Not to mention tsunamis.
No.
Let's have some order.
One more comment, and then I want to make sure everyone has.
I've got a couple of questions that's more focused towards the floor.
Yeah.
Okay, how many businesses are in the fort that are not commercial fishery related?
There's.
See, I'm having a tough time in my
There's
head.
the coffee
Oh, the
shop.
coffee shop,
You've
yeah.
got a coffee shop,
Right.
you've got the
Chamber
chamber,
free industry because it services the boats.
you've got the Chamber of Commerce down there also.
That's not
Now-
a business. Is that a business?
No, it's not a business.
Well, the Chamber of Commerce is the PR arm of Gloucester, but it's not a fishing-related industry. The people do get paid,
Right.
okay? It is a business, okay? So the problem I'm having is you already have some businesses in there that are not commercial fishing related.
Two at
Okay.
the very top of the street.
Right, and you
No,
had a brewery in there.
that's
Okay.
not
The brewery used to be there, okay? They moved up, and I believe the building they're in is still
It is.
within that
They
zone.
need to change the zoning
Okay.
to accommodate those, though. They're
Okay,
that's how they fit in.
But you see,
somehow, and they weren't grandfathered.
No, but
Because
they
they haven't
are-
been there
they
long
didn't-
enough.
They didn't need to change the zoning, though. We're fine with another business.
Okay.
You can make sneakers there.
Okay,
you'll be
the
fine.
point is, we have, I'm counting at least 3 businesses that are not commercial fishing related.
Two.
The brewery.
It's not an industrial
They're fishing
fishing.
with that.
And it's,
all right, but-
really a business?
But the point is,
Yeah.
there were some industries in there, okay, that were allowed to go in there, and they didn't fit the mold. Why were they allowed to go in?
David?
Wait a minute, hold the phone, that did it. Look,
Thank you, I finally got it, I woke you up.
we're talking MI here,
Yeah.
marine industrial.
Yeah.
Almost anything is allowed in marine industrial except for 2 things. Things with beds and yacht marinas, okay? You can put an office park in there, you can put a restaurant in there, you can put a bar in there, you can put a brewery in there, and all of those things are allowed. However, a hotel is not allowed.
It's about busting the zoning.
Okay, pardon my ignorance, but logically speaking, all right, they cook fish in the coffee shop, so I guess that's okay.
Yeah,
And they have a wooden fish inside the
You don't have to
chamber.
change the industrial, we're not changing the zoning for a project.
Okay,
Sir, let me help you understand, because obviously you need some help. We're not changing the zoning for a coffee shop. We're not changing, we haven't had a chance.
Jimmy, I think, wait, hold on. What I'm hearing is there are other uses besides marine industrial, and if they can happen, then maybe why can't it?
I'm just,
no.
I'm just trying to understand. I don't wanna spend,
Yeah, okay, that's the.
That's his question.
Yeah.
Thank you. So it's a really good question. And I think the answer is in what Ann was talking about earlier. So there are a couple of things. One, the businesses that are there, whether they do marine industrial or not, all have huge trucks, forklifts, they smell a lot. And they operate starting at 3 in the morning and going until, you know,
24/7.
24/7. I mean, she's talking about, I don't know if you've seen her tanker trucks, but she's talking about a real tanker truck, like, you know, a big 18-wheeler thing that's going on a very small street, and that's the only entry point for Commercial Street and the hotel. Then, so if you're talking about a Chamber of Commerce that operates 9 to 5, and I go there a lot because we can walk to that beach from our house at different times of day, that parking lot is never full. Even when the synagogue was in there waiting for the new one to be built, it was barely full when they were having services. So you're talking about a thing that doesn't have heavy use. It's not consistent use, and it's not happening when people in those offices aren't obstructing traffic. They're not bothered by, if they are bothered by the smell or the stink, they have to complain to the mayor to move their office. But it's a 9 to 5 situation.
But
In a
but
hotel,
the
you're
smell and
paying
the stink has always been there. I grew up down
No, I
the
understand, but a hotel.
Is it, sir, what's your name? I'm sorry. What's your name?
The last house on the left.
No, what's your name?
My name is Tim Miller.
Tim Moore, you grew up down the floor?
I did.
When did you move up?
Probably about 1958.
And may I ask where you live now?
I live right across the street.
Just, if I could add, when it was proposed that they build a hotel in Blackburn Industrial Park, Carolyn Kirk said, absolutely not, because to put a hotel next to industrial buildings raises the possibility of a conflict of interest, which would put at risk the businesses. A hotel of the size they described would require a minimum of 240 parking spaces. Right now, there are 20,000 cars a week in and out of that space now. An additional 240 cars and a parking lot that doesn't exist for them puts at risk businesses that are currently generating $100 million a year for the city.
You're misreading my dialogue.
No.
I'm not in support of the hotel or against anything. I was just raising the issue
I mean,
that there are other businesses in there.
Right, but
I have one more question because this is going to get dragged out. Why not I4C2?
well, actually, that's a good question. During Mayor Toby's tenure in office, they removed a section of the DPA from the DPA, and that was the space between Roger Street and Main Street, specifically for the intention of building a hotel. So if you've already taken away a chunk of the DPA and put in a hotel, why not put it there?
The old Empire Building.
It's the Empire Building, the police station's about to be vacant. Mac Bell owns a huge parking lot where Walgreens is. All of those are the same size as the lot the Bird's Eye's in now.
And
So
it'd be downtown.
if Mac wants a hotel,
Right on Main Street.
it's already zoned for it, it's permitted, and it was removed from the I4C, from the DPA specifically for that. To remove the I4C2 is reducing further the city's access to federal funding because there are only 2 city-owned lots in the DPA.
But why don't you put your business on iPost too?
The city doesn't want to sell
The
it.
city will only lease it.
It will only lease it to do a
Right.
long-term, they'll do a long-term lease.
They won't even talk about long-term leases now.
But it's a business.
If you do a
Business owner,
10-year
we don't
lease,
want to lease anyway, just because you're going to put all that investment into your property and, you know, tanks or whatever you
the
need.
building
Plus
is,
the water
Is the one thing to do with the Empire Building. He says it's my understanding that he doesn't want to sell.
Can I
it,
hear
he just
questions,
wants to lease it.
Yeah, good, okay, thanks for coming.
no, those are great questions. I mean, the Avenue is a nice space. It's easier access than a lot of places on the commercial streets, so certainly it has that big advantage. One of the problems, though, is that my business, like Ann's business, and like the Beehive before us, is a smelly business. And while on the fort there are smelly businesses, having a smelly business right near the center of the town would cause a conflict for the city. I don't think there is another place in the DPA where you could get by with making a large amount of stink. I mean, not a technical term, but I mean, it's a fact. The port is the last remaining place. It'll lose a piece of that. I think it's a real risk.
I think it's important to note, before we get 2 questions, I think it's really important to note the experts that have come forward regularly, whether it's a former Maine senator who out of 5,000 miles of coastline, they only have 25 miles of working waterfront left there. He wrote letters to planning board saying, don't make this mistake. City planners from Nantucket, don't make the same mistake we made. Experts in marine research, experts from all over the nation are coming and telling Gloucester. And this is part of why we're here. We need to raise awareness because there is a misinformation out there. They're trying to keep the blinders on people and think that this is just about one piece of property down the fort, and it's not. You have to know that the city has to do what's best for the city, not for a few property owners or a few people that are going to make a lot of money if they change what Gloucester is. Gloucester is a working waterfront.
You say what's best for the city? What's best for the city is what's best for the rest of the city. And if you...
The whole city. That's what I'm saying.
Right, and the neighbors around this part have a closed fire station down the street.
Right.
And
They said Gloucester Crossing was gonna open that. What happened there?
the more that things get blocked, the less revenue the city has.
All right, I just
The
want,
next time
Steve,
someone
could you please tell people who you are and what your business is?
My name's Steve Sefalo, I'm the networking. I have nothing to do with the waterfront at all.
You have nothing to do with Commercial Street property in North Atlantic?
What about it?
You sold the fish business, didn't you?
Isn't your father, you own the business in the building?
No, that's not constructive.
Well, I just want to know where the city's
I
coming.
grew up working on that wharf. I grew up down the fort, working at the fort. And I'm sorry, but it's not the place that it used to be. And we need to diversify. And the plan...
Are you being completely honest?
Just let him,
Yes,
just
I am.
let him say.
I am. If you can dispute anything I'm saying, go right ahead. So we have to die in April because the fire station happens more and more, and it's going to continue to happen because there's not enough revenue. The city needs money. Now, what's further is the hotel or some other developer who is ready to spend money is going to go and upgrade the sewer system to fix the part of the city that's been neglected by the city for so long. We're going to say no to that?
And getting rid of the working waterfront is going to fix all those
How's
problems?
it getting rid of it?
Steve, I'd like to answer that. First, a couple quick things to keep in mind. Let's assume they have 100 rooms. Let's assume they get $200 a night for a room.
That's a small.
Let's keep the money easy. Let's assume they have 100% occupancy, 365 days a year. You're looking at $7 million of revenue coming out of that business. There are currently $100 million coming out of Commercial Street, and Anne has a business which could easily multiply by a factor of 10 her current business if she has space to expand. So the math adds up. You're right. The city needs money.
You can split the math any number of different ways. With room tax and meal tax,
Right.
Those are revenues that go directly to the city versus an industry that does their city room taxes. They just passed laws where we have city room taxes, city meal taxes that went up.
What if they put all the other businesses out of business across the street, how much
But
does the city
the
lose?
revenue from that you're counting from the businesses, that's a revenue, that's not tax money.
I understand.
There's a different equation there.
No,
Now, we all heard the other arguments about how other big businesses wanted to locate here, but they didn't because they didn't have a hotel, a good quality hotel to stay at. So you look at the Gloucester Pharmaceutical Company out of Cambridge, they had the ripple out effect of $780 million, I think it was, but that we didn't get to take advantage of because we didn't have a hotel. And those are real things.
Steve, there are 2 permitted hotels already, and the one permitted at Gloucester Crossing meets the needs of the pharmaceutical group, which would have their business in Blackburn Park, where the other pharmaceutical corporation is. So those needs aren't met by changing the zoning, which puts other businesses at risk.
Those are also in dispute. The one on Essex Ave is highly disputed.
I didn't say Essex Ave.
And I don't know why that is either. It seems like we just block everything.
No,
We need to say yes to a couple things and maybe it'll work. I don't think it's a big
I was talking about Gloucester Crossing here, Steve.
If you're showing up on time,
David
you would have had a
says
reason
stand
to
up
block.
and
He
say
can't start his company here because he's
Suzanne?
being blocked.
Damon has his hand up.
Damon?
Sure is tough getting word in edgewise around here. I have a couple of little gripes here. In the fact sheet, it says the Harbor Economic Development Plan and DPA Master Plan address the need for a hotel in the downtown district. I served on the Harbor Plan for 12 years and also on the Harbor Economic Group. We specifically said, yes, we need a downtown hotel. We very DPA or the MI zone.
That's correct.
We wanted it downtown. We did not want to change the zoning. You can put, we have a zone already ready for a hotel. It is not allowed in MI. It is allowed in the central business district. For heaven's sake, put it in the central business district.
And where is that specifically? Does the
That whole section that we took out of the DPA,
Roger Street, basically.
between the Gattinary building and the senior center.
Okay.
That
Okay,
whole stretch
that's all
between
true.
Road and Roger.
Danny, absolutely true. But do we have an investor ready to do that right now? Is there property available to put that on right now?
Yes.
Of course there is.
Of course.
Where?
Of course. The hotel that was supposed to be built and was a part of the package of Boston Coffee has Mr. Park, who has a lot of money also.
That's not what we're talking about.
Pardon me?
That's not the place that we're talking about the section between Roger Street and Main Street. What property right now?
How about if they move the police station to Fuller like they're talking about?
I'm talking about the hotel issue, and I'd like to take it to the Gloucester Crossing area, because that is a hotel that has already been permitted by the city. And Mr. Park has been quoted as saying that he's not going to put the hotel there because there's a hotel proposed down at the Birdseye.
Right.
And he's going to wait and see what to do, because no intelligent investor is going to build 200-room hotels in Gloucester who does not at this time have the business for that in the type of economy that we're in right now. So when he proposed that, I was against that place. I haven't shot there yet. And I was told, oh, well, but it's wonderful. We're going to have an assisted living
Well,
facility.
he's also had a lot of time
Can
to
I
go ahead and
finish
build
what
it,
I
and
have
this
to
just
say,
came up.
please? I'd like to finish. We're going to have assisted living. We're going to have a hotel. The people whose families are in the assisted living can come and visit them, and they can stay in the hotel. Mr. Josephson at Varian always said, we need a hotel. We need a hotel near Varian. It needs to be a business hotel. So we got our business hotel permitted, and the city has been anticipating the 80 to 100 jobs already from that hotel, which has not been built and is not going to be built. So we've destroyed some land, and we put in a project which is less than what it was, and the city gave that person a tip, and it caused all sorts of discomfort and upset in the city. And now we're doing it again when we have 2 hotels that are permitted. The other hotel on 133 could be a nice riverfront hotel. Some of the rooms would look out at the river, some of the rooms would look out at the ocean, because it would be tall enough. It's a great spot. It had a marina, it's got a, people can get on whale watch boats. People can go there without bringing their cars into the downtown, into either of those hotels. That is under a problem with the neighbors complaining about sewering problems. So since the city is in the midst of solving its sewering problems for the first time in the whole time I've lived here in that part of the city, if they did that, they have 2 options for hotels already to be built. I don't think we need a third option that takes away from industries that are already making money, want to expand, and Davis has elevated the property value on that marine industrial land so that it can never be a marine industrial property again, because nobody who has a marine industrial business can afford to put a business in that where he has to pay $6.4 or $5 million. So he has altered. And what will happen when that area elevates and this money comes in is not just that fire stations may be open, but that your taxes and my taxes are going to go up. People look at it and they think, oh boy, we're going to save all this money and the city's going to have all this money. And really what's going to happen is I'm going to be priced out of this community. I work as a nurse. I have a good individual income, but I'm not going to be able to afford to live here. And who's going to be your baseball coaches for the kids? Who's going to be the school teachers who live here, who stay after school with your children? Who are going to be the nurses? Those people get priced out like they have in Nantucket and Newport. And now those communities are looking at their waterfronts and they're saying that actually, excuse me, do you have a comment to me?
No, I don't.
Well, what are you talking to him for when I'm talking?
You're holding the floor too long, you're letting
You
me.
had plenty of loss. You had plenty of
All right.
I'm finished.
No, no, just go ahead, finish.
No, I'll just add. So, Marcia made a very good point about the sewer. The hotel that, right now we're doing sewer improvements, I mean, we're all seeing the digging going on. The sewer that would be needed out on the fort right now for the improvement for the 4 to 5 businesses that are currently there would be an inferior cost to the sewer that would be needed to handle a 100-room or 80-room hotel. The added cost of that sewer gets absorbed by the community, which is the equivalent of a tip, because that's millions of dollars of upgrade. Gloucester Crossing, on the other hand, no, it's a fact. I mean, I'm an engineer. I can give you that as hard numbers. if you would like. And it's actually already documented in the fiscal impact study that was done in 2009 by the city of Gloucester. So it's hard numbers. Those numbers are true for Gloucester Crossing, where they have improved the sewer. So if we put the hotel and allow Mr. Parks to build the Gloucester Crossing Hotel as is already permitted, we don't, out of our pockets, have to pay for any additional sewer.
I'd like to address a couple of
Is that, I mean, you agree on those 2 points?
I don't agree with the numbers because we don't know what the package is that the developer was offering for the sewer upgrade. So you cannot, that's a
Joe Cholino said that the city would pay for the sewer upgrade.
Joe Cholino did not make all the decisions for the cities. You don't know what the developer is going to offer for the sewer upgrade package. That's a fact.
Do you?
As it stands, that's what the city has said. So, and the Gloucester Crossing sewer is already done.
Okay. Who has stopped Sam Parks from developing that hotel and assisted living facility that he has been promising us for how many years? Does anybody believe he's going to do that?
No, the city has successfully stopped him by proposing a Marriott and then Mac Bell's hotel proposition down there.
So Sam is getting...
Of course he's not going to build it. If you're actually listening to the way in which he spoke and listen to the people here, and don't be like the city and not listen to what people are trying to tell you, you have to listen and not just talk, Stevens. I know you stand to profit greatly from this rezoning, but that doesn't make it right.
How do I do that? How do I do that? You tell me how I profit one day.
No, he doesn't. I correct.
Thank you. Because I'd like to remove that from all of the...
No, it's true. But you see, Stephen, I really stick to just the facts.
I apologize for that.
Okay.
I strike that from the record.
For your other question.
There are a couple of questions. She made some really good points.
Marcia made great points, and one of them was the hotel between Rogers Street and Main Street, which you said, where's the investor and where's the lot? Well, one of the partners in this group, because 33 Commercial Street is owned by Mac Bell, is clearly Mac Bell.
Yeah.
Mac Bell isn't the investor. He owns the lot that the Walgreen parking lot is. There's the lot, there's your investor. He already owns the lot and has the capital.
Has he proposed to build something there?
No, but if he wants to, he has the space.
They'll have us behind him.
And the zoning permitted.
So that he hasn't proposed it, he's not saying he wants to do it, so we're going to say, we're going to wish him to do that.
But if he wants to, but you're saying...
Yeah, the other thing, I want to talk about the taxes for a second, because the taxes keep going up. And I'm a residential property owner, and I pay a tremendous tax bill. And I feel like I get nothing for it. I pay extra to have my kid in private school, I pay for a close fire station. What am I getting for my tax bill? Okay, and I don't agree that bringing in revenue to the city by bringing business here, which will attract more businesses, is going to raise my tax bill. Because the burden, I think 85 to 90% of the city's tax revenue is on residential tax income. Okay, it's what? 80%. It's a huge number. We need to diversify that down, take some of the burden off the residential taxpayers and put it onto businesses. And we simply do not have investors to do that, except for a couple that we're now disputing. If you think some park is going to build a hotel anytime soon.
The hotel's going to rent at $400, $500 a night. What kind of hotel is going to go up to $200 a night? And also, what about in the winter when there's nothing here? They're going to have conferences? What kind of conferences out there when it's freezing? There's another thing that you didn't talk about. Somebody said that this is not a fish last night, when we had a meeting Monday night, somebody said this is one of the top 3 ports on the New England coast from Maine to Florida. So that's pretty important, that we're still a fishing industry port, and it's been statistically mentioned.
And it's in the top 9.
And again, I
And
think,
then there was a woman here from environmental funding. I wanted to talk about her because I went up to her and I said, how can we stop this? And she says there's ways of stopping it, but you have to get the community together. So did anybody get her name or use the information?
We
Because
do.
she said it'll take a long time, but Pittsburgh did it in 6 months. But do we have to go door to door? We may have to go knocking on doors and talk to each person to make them understand. Because I can see in this room with 20 people, there's no understanding. It's unbelievable. What are you going to do with 10,000 people out there?
That's a great point, and that's why Valerie organized this evening, because one of the things that needs to happen, and the reason I'm so quick to jump on Jimmy, is because we need to actually have civil discussions. We need to actually just put the facts on the table.
How long do we have? If we have to file to keep that I-4OC, whatever you call that,
May
from being changed, how long do we have?
The vote is in about a month. So I would like to, I mean, one of my aspirations for this meeting is that there may be, it's true, there may be some concerns up here that are different from those of you who are directly experiencing it. And in case you didn't know, the Bayview Fire Station is closed.
Wait, no, I know.
So, I mean, the flip side of that is, like I said at the very beginning, Lanesville has relied on the goodwill of the city and other neighborhoods at various points to preserve our important resources and help us out. And I think it's important for us to listen to you, to know what you're experiencing, and we're all part of the same city. That said, it seems to me that the tax issue is one that is in a lot of people's minds up here. David and I did a little calculation yesterday, assuming they said they would invest 17 to 20 million in this hotel. So let's just say it was $20 million value place, and that's essentially about $260,000 a year in taxes. Now that's not counting the meals and room tax, but let's just say on real estate. And then we said, well, what if the hotel actually was built by Santa Park? Let's say it's not quite as valuable. Let's say it's $200,000 in taxes from the hotel at Gloucester Crossing. Now you're getting to the point where you're saying, for a $50,000 difference in tax revenue, we're ripping apart and holding off prospects for the working waterfront that are coming in marine science and investments and whatever, over a $50,000 tax difference. I mean, and it is incumbent upon us to get those numbers right and make it clear what it is actually at stake. And the other thing is that the storyline about, lift the zoning and then we'll change into Nantucket or something like that is essentially the idea. We're failing to look at really where the rot is also happening. The industrial parks have been losing companies, and there's abandoned space up in those parks. And to me, it makes sense to protect this working waterfront. We hear this from planners everywhere. You don't recognize the value of what you have, and do not give that up at your peril. We probably should be focusing our tax revenue search for the schools and the fire stations up in those industrial parks and asking why the city is not pushing them and instead of this idea of this hotel that is so divisive and so potentially dangerous to get in.
Can I go into the taxes a little bit more?
Yeah.
By building a new plant and getting new tax revenue, the city gets more money in per year. And that does not hit the 2.5% barrier if it's new revenue. And that allows you to keep fire stations open and so forth. However, what it does not do is it does not reduce your taxes. That just doesn't happen. The 2.5%. Well, at present we're paying about 1.5%. About 1.3% of our assessed value in taxes. Will continue to pay that, whether a new plant comes in or not, that additional revenue can be spent by the city, but it can't be used to reduce, it won't be used to reduce our taxes.
Denise had a
I
question.
mean, anybody said tax would be reduced, if you assume any tax will be reduced ever in your life, then you're pretty naive.
Nobody said that.
It will lower the burden of our increasing costs of everything from the taxpayer, the residential tax.
Can I link that all together?
Yeah, it's-
Does anybody work in the tourism industry here at all? Currently? Ever? Hotels? No?
This being a tour guide.
Okay. I have worked in many hotels in Gloucester, many, and until recently, about a year ago.
Come out in front.
Yes.
Thank you, Eric.
My name's Denise Foley, and I have a little shop in Gloucester. But my point is that I've worked at many hotels here. The latest, I worked at Bass Rocks Ocean Inn. The best, in my opinion, hotel in Gloucester. It's world class. We have actors that are starring in movies that are filmed here that stay there and love it, and they come back.
Excuse me, I'm sorry. This is the Attorney John Cunningham in the presentation of the proposal on March 12th at City Hall.
Now, I'm gonna lose my thought.
Tax revenues from the hotel and the businesses that will work with the hotel will support the city budget, broaden the tax base, and lessen the load on homeowners and renters for real estate taxes. That's the proponent, saying that your taxes will go down.
Back to where I was, so I can think of it. Anyways, so we have a lot of people that come here and they love it. They stay, they pay the money. It's $289 a night during the high season. Some rooms are up to $359 a night to stay there. And they don't fill up. Those big rooms don't always fill up every weekend, but they're there and people love them. And it is the best view around. Now, when I work the desk, people want to know what to do in Gloucester. I am a person who will send them down the fort. Not to go run around in the marina, but I send them to Pavilion Beach. They look at the old buildings. They come back and they tell me, we have been here back and forth for 50 years. Nobody has ever sent us to the center of this mecca, and they love it. They love it, and they say they're coming back again. They are so happy about that. So my thought is, we're not saying no hotels. Obviously, we have people proposing already. I would love to get behind somebody to do the long wings. I would help promote that, because we want a downtown hotel, because that links our treasures in Gloucester that we have currently to people that want to see us working. They want to see it going on. Downtown, saying somebody should propose it, the views from the second and third floor, if you're thinking you're going to have a parking garage downstairs, second and third floor, views of the working waterfront are unbelievable. My parents have a store downtown. I go up to the second and third floor, and you cannot believe the views. I would love to live there. So that was that point. Let's see. Yeah, so anyway, with that, the city as a whole, the best interest would be to have the cake and eat it too, and not just serve it to the rich few. The other part of that is something I haven't shared, but imagine this. We talked about having a hotel on the fort, and I don't see how they're going to fit it in there, but okay, so say they do. Imagine the kid that runs across the street to Intershell, or wherever, any of these businesses that have forklifts running all the time, and bam, they're gone. Let me just tell you, it's not a pipe dream. My grandfather was a very experienced fisherman. He owned the St. Peter fishing boat. Healthy as a horse, that man would have been alive today probably. He was so experienced, yet he still was killed by a forklift down the fort, and he knew what he was doing at all times. Both the forklift operator and him, they saw each other. Next thing you know, boom, and I've never saw him again. So I know that's a little emotional, but it's the absolute truth. And he knew that working waterfront like the back of his hand.
I know a girl that was hit by a 18-wheeler on Commercial Street. She still has the scar on her leg.
Combine the two.
Exactly, that was the point. It's not feasible.
Denise, I want to just add something to yours, or ask a question which actually ties into what Steve was saying. I mean, Steve rightly says, a lot of taxes, but Bayview's closed, Magnolia's closed, we have schools that are way underfunded. There needs to be more money. I'd like to really go into an in-depth discussion about all the raises that were just voted for the city, but we'll leave that for another day. If I'm earning money and I live in Gloucester, if I earn $16,000 a year, I can cover my rent. I can maybe feed my kids. If I'm earning 60 to 80,000, I can easily cover my rent. I'm going to feed my kids well, and I'm going to have enough money left to spend and buy more things in the community. The more I spend in the community, now it's a fact, locally owned businesses and locally owned income, 73 cents on every dollar remains in the community, and that's what helps the community. If you, when you were working at Bayview, which by your account is the best, Bass Rocks, which is the best in the area, can I ask you what you were getting paid at the front desk? I mean,
I have no shame. I started at $10 an hour.
Okay.
I did a whole year, and I got a raise the second year, a whole quarter.
Okay, and so how much were you making a year after taxes?
Let's see, well, I worked from May through November 1st or October 31st. I can't even tell you the numbers, but they were very low.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay, $1,200 a month for 6 months. So you were making 12 times 6 is, right? So that's how much money you have per year to live on. She's not going to be spending in the community. And that affects all of us. If our neighbors have higher incomes, they're spending more in the community, that is more tax revenue for the city. Because every sale is useful for the city. If it's local money, it stays local. So
how does blocking a hotel raise people's income?
But we don't want to block any hotels, we got one down the floor. We got one hotel.
What's the business of the other side of the street out of business?
It doesn't put anybody out of business.
How do you know?
she needs to expand. She can't expand.
Well, there's a property right next to it. Yeah, real soon.
Well, we're in negotiation with Mr. Kukuru. But the point is if we can't get space out on the fort, even Ann's been talking about moving everything to New Bedford. You know, these are issues.
Also, there is the case of the jihad getting closed because of the smells. What happens if...
That was mismanagement of the jihad that caused that. And we know that.
What happens if it does? Let me ask you this question. What happens if it does interfere with the businesses across the street and you lose all of the jobs and revenue and it gets bought out?
I don't think that's going to happen because we're talking about how quaint it is to stay in our And well, let's just say from experience, I know that a lot of the forters have complained about cooking of fish smells for dozens of years. We've had to fight those battles on and on, so.
But it's all marine industrial, so you won every time.
I'd like to ask Patty, who has her hand raised, because maybe there's a story from Mortalaros that you want to tell. Patty?
Yeah, I
I think you're going to know the property you're talking about pretty well.
Can you speak up?
Are you familiar with
the corner?
Yeah, the corner of the fort.
Yeah.
Fort Square and Commercial Street?
Yeah.
Do you know what that building does today?
I know.
Okay, that building houses 15,000 pounds of lobsters. It supports Mortalaros Lobster. That is at 60 Commercial Street, which is across from the Bird's Eye. But you well know the tin building is in the corner of
I know.
Commercial Street and a central point.
There.
That's right.
Yeah.
That's right. Well, it does support 25% of a multi-million-dollar business. That building is in real threat. Now, people, and I'm not saying that you're for or against anything, I hope you're here to get information. But if people would like the hotel or the rezoning to accommodate a hotel, then I would recommend people start putting up 25% of their yearly income for the rest of their lives. Because that's what they're asking Mr. Mortalaros to do. They want to take the building reduce him by 25%. Now, I'm sure you know Vince, and I'm sure you know Gino. They're very hardworking people. They've been there forever. Yep, they have. I'm sure you know them.
I used to hang out with Gino every day.
All right, okay, so you get it, and I mean, they started that business from nothing, they built it to a multi-million-dollar corporation, they're international shippers of lobsters. They're the 12th largest live lobster company in the country presently, and they're in a marine industrial zone doing marine industrial work, and it is a true, real threat to that building. Now, how do you reconcile, and I'm not saying for or against, but how do you reconcile someone coming in and taking 25% of what they built for a hotel?
I completely understand what you're saying, but how are they gonna take it away?
Can I ask you to tell the story that was so striking to me of a few years ago when the noise was a problem and the ordinance?
Okay, and he probably knows that too, but what's happened is since 2008, and I need to go back here, is the first proposal that the city came up with for rezoning, presentation at City Hall. And I saw a presentation from Sarah Garcia. The tin building not on the boutique fish market, as best I could tell. I couldn't recognize it, Steve. So I went from there and went down to Vince, and I said, Vince, they're just taking your property off the map. Joey Canzano's house was gone. Okay, so there were some real red flags for me about what this proposal meant. That died. The second proposal that came on the table was from Matt Bell. The tin building was included in his property, in the proposal. And I personally spoke, this is not hearsay, I personally spoke to Matt Bell's architect. And I don't remember his name was David something, and I said, I'm sorry? Griffin, yes it was, I think it was David Griffin. And I said, are you the architect? He said, yes. I said, what is your plan for 65 Commercial Street, which is the Augusta Tin Building? And he said, oh, Mortalaros. That will be incorporated into the project. He will be allowed access, and there will be a monetary award. Well, you can't imagine how quickly Mr. Bell whisked Mr. Griffin out of my view. And also, Mr. Bell, before he did that, said to me, I will rely on you to leverage Vince for me. Now, these are real one-on-one. Okay, so I'm just giving you some context.
Now you guys own that property?
Okay, now we're on number 3.
Yeah.
Okay, the third time, I went to City Hall, it was January 12th, the first proposal. Again, for some reason, these very well-qualified, I would assume high-paid people had the tin building included into the property as if they owned it. And it is actually not the correct way to go about business to include someone's property in rezoning without notifying them, some way, somehow, either coming across the street or having an attorney speak to your attorney. So that's number 3. So I'm just trying to give you some, and I know
if that was my property, I'd be completely aggravated by that as well.
Okay.
I think it's wrong.
Thank you.
Yes.
It is wrong,
Yeah.
whether it's hotel or not, rezoning or not.
Yeah.
What has happened to date
Yeah.
to Mr. Mortalato is incredibly wrong. And I will tell you about Valerie's story. I'm sorry I'm going on a little long. I know. Keep going. But these are relevant stories that don't really come out. And Vince had property down there, the tin building. His father built it. He bought it in 1962 and built it. The freezer hadn't even been built yet. The freezer came to Michael Mortalato and said, would you sell for an incredible amount of money? And I don't want to quote the number because I think it gets larger every time they tell the story, but it was a significant amount of money. He said, no, where would my boys work? Since 1964 until the day Matt Bell bought the freezer, everybody's lived happily ever after. All of a sudden, things changed when ownership changed. Then, 2 times in the course of the Mortalatos being down there, they've been asked to go out of business. Once was when they built tuna coffins. You're probably familiar with that? Business. The city restricted them from building tuna coffins. They had to start 7 a.m. and stop at 7 p.m. You couldn't hammer and make any noise down there ever again. Their tuna coffee business went away because people sourced it from people that could provide them.
Why did the city stop them from banging out?
Neighbors complained.
Those ordinances.
Neighbors complained, yes. There were residential people that were grandfathered in the zoning that complained about the marine industrial business in the marine industrial zone. So those are not scare tactics, this has happened. Number two.
Okay, but I want to reiterate that if you could.
Okay.
That was right there on Commercial Street, on the fourth
The
square
tin
corner.
building.
The tin building.
Yes, sir.
And there was residents of the fort. who
That's what I
complained.
understand, I wasn't there.
What year was it?
Sorry, I don't know. But when tuna coffins were with.
The reason the residents got zoned marine industrial was because then there's different decibel levels. If it's zoned residential, it's 1 decibel level. If it's zoned marine industrial, it's another decibel level.
I understand that, and I
What with the
understand, and
hotel?
it's a terrible thing
So
that
if
happens.
you rezone, then
They're not
it's
talking about,
different.
they're not talking about rezoning the fort, they're talking about rezoning one property. And I think it's very important for other people to also understand that the residents of the fort are what tried to shut down that building business and did shut down that business. And it's the residents of the fort who have made numerous other complaints about noise.
Well, that's why I asked what year it was.
And we're all, and your group here is talking about residents of the fort are all about commercial businesses on the fort, and it's just simply not the case, because they fought them for 50 years. They fought the smells, they
They're
fought
not
the
fighting
noise.
us now.
And you're right, Stevie, and you probably know some of this history better than I do, so I don't mean to be presumptuous
It's your story, and I'm agreeing with
delivering
you.
it, but however, over the course of years, it has mitigated some. The residents have found a better place with the industrial people. I know the Cape Pond Ice has spent an untold amount of money in trying to reduce noise on their, was it chillers on the roof or whatever? But what Val refers to is during Bruce Tovey's time, the residents complained again about things, loading trucks. And there is an ordinance in the city of Gloucester that applies to everyone in the city of Gloucester that says you can't load a truck on a city street after 7 p.m. or before 7 a.m. Now, if you go to Richdale's, you see 5 a.m., the milk truck is there. But the residents complained about the trucks. So Vince had to stop putting trucks on the street and loading them. For a couple days, he couldn't work. And his father said, well, what are you thinking? He built a door in the tin building so they could literally put the trucks on private property and load and offload. They didn't change their work hours, they didn't change their model of business, but they had to change and accommodate because they were in a marine industrial zone being told they couldn't work. So these are real stories that go on down there. And it is affecting marine, a very successful marine business.
Can you
Yes, sir.
explain why this property is so enticing to put a hotel? What kind of view does it have? In this picture, there's no beach.
There is no beach.
And why not just tell Mr. Davis to build a hotel on Niles Beach? You can see downtown Boston.
You go tonight.
But why is it here? Why here? Mac Bell tried to do it, he couldn't do it, and so did before he couldn't do it.
That's a real good question.
Why is he doing it?
You have to ask, after the Marriott was shut down, you have to
Why just
ask.
ask him why you just not do it? Rent the property out to people on the fort use,
Let me ask
and then
you.
build a hotel from there, you know?
I would love to hear the answer to the question. Mayor Kirk's Marriott proposition failed, and Mac Bell's mixed-use proposition failed. Clearly, the city council did not want to rezone that marine industrial piece of property for a hotel or a mixed use with some residential components. Now, all of a sudden, this is what baffles me and what got me involved. All of a sudden, Jim Davis comes and buys it for three times, let me finish, 3 times what it got paid for, and announces, we're gonna put in a Gulfport hotel. How is it that the city isn't appalled by that after 2 rezoning? How is it that rezoning? How is it that they're not saying, there's no way you're gonna build that? That's all down there. That's a good question.
There's this view. So I've been down to Gracie Fall on a boat.
It's not even about, in my personal opinion, it's not even about a hotel. They're getting the property, and they're getting, did you see the map they passed around? You see what they're doing? That's called land grabbing. They're kind of control, in my personal speculation, and this is just speculation, but I know, there's a new society here, It includes a lot of people that have a vision for what Gloucester should be.
Disney World.
And they're gonna get rid of what Gloucester is, piece by piece. Let's get rid of the marine industrial, let's take this piece out of the DPA, exactly like it happened in Nantucket, and piece by piece, they're gonna create,
So what can we do?
and this is a quote, my Gloucester.
No, but what can we do to help stop it? Who gets the final word
Thank
on
you.
this?
The numbers don't jive. What these guys have in their mind is very under-ambitious. They want to make less money, they want to create less jobs, and we have.
Susanna, this is really important. That's a tremendous question.
Yes, would you answer it?
Well, I don't know the
Okay,
answer.
so
I was thinking
Rick-
it's come to
Rick-
meetings.
That's the question that we need to answer here.
It is a great question.
Anyway, Nat, I want to ask.
No, let him answer the question. Hey.
Can you not leave then, Frank, just so I make sure that if you have questions, you can ask?
I haven't got any questions.
Good.
I've heard plenty.
It's the best question, Rick.
Do you have
I
any
mean,
suggestions?
and the relevance is,
I like
so first, it's a two-part answer. Very quickly, the first is,
You like something about.
you're doing it. By publicly showing up to these things. We had a meeting on Monday, we're having this one, there's probably gonna be one in Magnolia and one in East Gloucester.
The city hall tomorrow.
City Hall
City
tomorrow,
Hall.
correct?
And so people, if people, I mean, this is, as far as I know, still a democracy. If we tell the city, wait a second, the numbers don't add up, we're worried about this costing us more money rather than bringing in revenue, show us the money, please give us an economic impact study which demonstrates that this is actually beneficial for
And
our
I
city.
think the most important thing is talk to Jackie Hardy.
Talk to Jackie
Jackie
Hardy.
Hardy should know what
Jackie
the
gets a
residents think
And
about the
she
city.
gets a real vote in this. And the
I'll see you tomorrow night over at City Hall.
Okay.
We'll talk more about it.
Sure, and the relevance here is, I think, if people are concerned about something and the city doesn't, the Fort issue is one issue, but it could happen here too. And so that's something that we need to be
So
aware
what
of.
does Mrs. Darrow say to do? The legal environmental fund lady who was here last night, she's the one who knows how we can stop this. And that's what I'm here for. I can't stand all this dialogue anymore. I mean, I heard it's a done deal, that we have nothing. This is just where we're airing out all our vent and steam. So what do we do? Where's the plan for doing?
I think we have to keep on dialoguing so that people.
We have 30 days.
I think this gentleman and that gentleman are hearing some information that they can chew on. Whether it changes their minds or not, I don't know. But I think we need to spread the information around, the questions around, so that more people are invested in trying to get it. So
There's a lot of money and it's a tax write-off, whether it's hotel mates or not, he doesn't give.
Yeah, but the
I have one more thing.
Right, but that's the awareness we have to
I'm
raise.
not pro for this hotel for any other reason than the fact that the city needs the investment. And I think if this investment dries up, we're gonna be sorry. Just like we were sorry that the mall at I-4C2 was not allowed, and we've had an ISO for 40 years down there, and we're gonna see Addison Gilbert close and move away, and we're gonna see worse and worse schools and less fire coverage, and the water and everything else that we have here. It's gonna get harder for us to pay for, and it's just gonna get worse, and I think we're gonna be sorry if
So you believe the hotel is gonna solve all those problems?
I think it's,
$70 million
I believe, I totally agree that this is probably not the best spot for it.
And that's all the way to answer hotel.
But we have an investor here that's ready to spend the money and do it, and we shouldn't turn that away.
No, we're not turning
In
it
this
away.
economic climate, we're looking at gift horse now, really.
We don't want to turn them away. We don't want to turn them away. We don't want it to bust a whole road.
All right. Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Thanks for coming, everybody.